Welcome to Pod Save America. I'm Jon Favreau.
I'm Jon Lovett.
I'm Tommy Vietor.
On today's show...
fields.
What?
What?
On today's show, Donald Trump asks if Mitch McConnell has a death wish. Republican Senate candidates are polling better. The House is still in play. And later, we sit down with our old friend and colleague Cody Keenan to talk Obama speechwriting and his new book, Grace. All right, let's get to the news. So one storyline of these midterms has been the will they or won't they dynamic between Donald Trump and Mitch McConnell. The latest chapter started when Trump truthed. So many things start when Trump truths.
He's really truthing a lot these days.
He's truthing his ass off. All right, so Trump truthed that McConnell's support for the Democrats' continuing resolution to fund the government means that he has a death wish and, quote, must immediately seek help and advise from his China-loving wife, Coco Chow, which is Trump's racist nickname for former Trump Transportation Secretary Elaine Chao. So McConnell and most Republicans have said nothing in response, though Senator Rick Scott was asked about the comment during the Sunday shows. Here's what he said.
You're a member of the Senate GOP leadership. Are you okay with this?
Well, look, I can never respond to why anybody else says what they said, but here's what is the way I looked at it is I think, what the president is saying is, there's been a lot of money spent over the last 2 years. We've got to make sure we don't keep caving to Democrats. It's causing unbelievable inflation and causing more and more debt. As you know, the president likes to give people nicknames. You can ask him how he came up with the nickname. I'm sure he has a nickname for me. It's never, ever okay to be a racist. Look, I think you always have to be careful, if you're in the public, eye, how you say things. You want to make sure you're inclusive. You want to make sure, like yesterday in the neighborhood I was in, we had people probably from 10 countries that live there. And so that's what's great about this country. And what I try to do is try to make sure everybody, especially all their kids, believe they have a hope and they can live the dream of this country. So I hope no one is racist. I hope no one says anything that's inappropriate. So I'm going to do everything I can.
Do you? I know this is down the list here, but do you like the birds chirping in the background?
I mean,
as he's just dissembling on live television.
I think it's sad based on this clip that I want Mitch McConnell to be murdered less than Rick Scott does, and I think that's especially troubling because if someone does follow what Trump wants, and Trump does want someone to try to kill Mitch McConnell, if that does end up happening, it's even worse for Rick Scott now because this clip will fucking exist.
He's got a silver tongue, though. No wonder they made him the spokesman for the NRSC.
So smooth.
Smooth. Did we put that at like 1.5x?
I was going to say, this is low on the list of problems with that, but just yeah, Rick Scott, he should be the public face of the Republican Party. Get him out more.
But also, I
want more Rick Scott from the Republican Party.
And just a quick note to Rick's staff: when the presumptive nominee and former president of your party threatens to kill the minority leader of your own party, you should probably prep that answer. A couple runs.
Think that might be coming.
Might come up.
That might be a question. Are you guys a little surprised that elected Republicans couldn't bring themselves to criticize their party's 2024 frontrunner for threatening their Senate Minority Leader's life and calling his wife a racist slur? Or no surprises?
Sadly, no. I think this all goes back to 2016, the primary, when we watched Marco Rubio flail around and try to make dick jokes, and then Ted Cruz called Trump a sniveling coward for criticizing his wife, and then phone banged for him a few weeks later. So, I mean, these guys have all decided just to never pick a public fight because they know Trump will go harder and will never stop. So, look, McConnell doesn't care, really. Doesn't care about defending his wife. He doesn't care about his honor or looking pathetic. He wants power and lobbyist checks and to support candidates that will help Senate Republicans. So no, I expect nothing from these guys.
Lovett, why do you think they're being so quiet? What would have been the problem? Mitch McConnell saying, no, I don't think that it was a good idea for the president to say that I have a death wish, and I don't like that he called my wife a racist name. You don't think you think what's going to happen then?
Well, I feel like they've abandoned. So the reason to do that obviously is because Trump's reprehensible.
And it's also just the most natural response when someone threatens your life.
Yeah, there is that piece.
Threatens your life and calls your wife a racist name.
Yeah, you'd think. But look, I don't know if you've noticed, but Mitch McConnell's a pretty cynical guy. And I feel like if you're going to rationalize the amount of things these people have rationalized over the past 6 years. What's one more time? And they know that picking a fight with Trump, it won't change Trump. It'll make the story bigger. And obviously they care more about getting back to focusing on bullshit crime-related political attacks or immigration-related political attacks or anti-trans-related political attacks. They'd rather get back to that than have a news cycle about Trump and his awful rhetoric, because they've sort of accepted that this is the status quo ante with Trump. They have no hope of changing it, and the only thing they're afraid of is being on the losing end of it.
I do like the Washington Post reported on this story, and the way they described it was just perfect. The Post marked a further escalation in an increasingly strained relationship between the two Republican leaders.
Increasingly strained.
He did try to have Mike Pence hanged outside the Capitol.
I know.
So they're sort of, this is not, it's not a new
first time.
escalation. It's just that this is his natural resting place at this point.
I mean, even the Wall Street Journal editorial board said they were concerned that someone might take Trump seriously and try to kill Mitch McConnell.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not a
so.
right-wing editorial board.
And not only were they concerned, look, there for the Wall Street Journal editorial board, there are two big problems. One is somebody may kill Mitch McConnell, and the other is it's the distraction from their midterm message. They actually was like, Trump shouldn't be threatening Mitch McConnell's life. He should be out there campaigning for these Republicans.
For
Should be
deregulation.
threatening a Democrat. So Rick Scott was also asked about Marjorie Taylor Greene's comments at this weekend's Trump rally in Michigan, where she said, "I'm not going to mince words. Democrats want Republicans dead, and they've already started the killings." New York Times just ran a piece on political violence where Susan Collins was quoted as saying, "I wouldn't be surprised if a senator or House member were killed." What do you guys think about that? Do you think it's important to highlight these threats? Is this a...
Yeah, I mean, like the fact that the Times had to do like a trend piece on this does show that we have the memories of goldfish in politics. Like, remember the insurrection that happened last year?
Yeah.
But I mean, I think Marjorie Taylor Greene is a genuinely stupid person. She's seized on lots of conspiracy theories that are wacky, the Jewish space lasers, QAnon, like Broken Brain, Facebook group stuff. The allegations here, just so people know, seem to be baseless. They're clearly baseless, that there's some sort of broader fight against Republicans from Democrats. But even these individual cases she's referencing, like there's a North Dakota man who was drunk, had mental health issues, hit someone with their car. There's no evidence of a political motive. And this Michigan shooter says he was an accident, and apparently he's a Republican or has voted in Republican primary. So just made up nonsense. It is incredibly dangerous, though, because we've seen how the Great Replacement theory has led to violence. We've seen language about quote unquote white genocide and the way that has motivated some really disturbed people. And I think even an idiot like MTG can convince other people that they're at risk or under threat and inspire them to do things. And Trump has also been talking about this North Dakota incident at some of his rallies too. So I think this stuff is you should take it seriously. It scares me a lot. I do think there's also an asymmetric increase of like apocalyptic messaging on the Democratic side. There was a long, I think, Post piece about that over the weekend. I'm not saying they're the same thing, but you can just see how the sides get driven further apart. And we've back in the day after elections, you would have this moment where everyone involved says, okay, now we need to come together. Let's sort of like put these fights aside. That just has not happened in the last half decade or more. And it's scary.
Love it.
Right-wing political violence is rising. Right-wing political extremism is rising. We've already had a series of mass shootings that were based in right-wing hate and misinformation and bigotry. There will probably be more. It is, I think, luck that a member of Congress wasn't killed on January 6th. It is luck that others haven't been killed so far. And, Trump doesn't care. He views it as useful. It's why he enjoys the support of QAnon. He likes that he has the backings of the most radical and dangerous elements of the right-wing fringe. And the fact that even the supposedly serious parts of the Republican Party are too afraid to speak out against it means that all the signaling and all the rhetoric and all the extremism is sort of untempered and not being kind of and the elites of the Republican Party aren't doing enough to signal to the base and beyond that this is unacceptable and not part of their movement. And so, they're playing with fire and we live in a dangerous country and it's only going to get worse.
There's a lot of guns out there.
I mean, well, I was going to say, not only are they not signaling that it's unacceptable, the Center for American Progress did an analysis and identified 104 political ads from Republicans this cycle that feature guns or weapons in the ads. We've talked about some of these on this show.
Wasn't
before.
Eric Greitens went rhino hunting in one of his ads, like kicked down a door searching for rhinos?
Or there's like whole families holding, AK-47s in a Christmas card kind of thing, that bullshit. Look, I think we have to keep talking about this because it is easy to get numb to this, to forget about it. Like you said, our memories are too short on this. When I was talking to the voters in Pittsburgh for the Wilderness, I asked about what issues the media covers too much, and a lot of them talked about January 6th. And I said, well, are you not worried that something like that could happen again? And a couple of people said, well, it's just an isolated incident, right? Like it's just a one-off, and it seems like that could happen anytime, but that's not like a real trend. And I think
hope so.
You read that New York Times story, it's like, Pramila Jayapal has a guy with a gun outside of her house, like screaming things, I mean, this is, look, members of Congress have had to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on security because of death threats.
And it's more likely that you will be threatened if you're a person of color or a woman in elected office. I mean, I think Warnock had spent like $900,000 since 2021 on security.
There's a plot to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer,
which her opponent, Tudor Dixon, recently joked about.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the 2018 midterms, even before January 6th, remember the pipe bombs that were sent? I mean, it's been since 2016 specifically when Trump, came down that fucking escalator. It has been on the rise.
Yeah, and I do think that the way this works now is you have the most extreme members of the Republican Party with platforms kind of spewing this stuff out into the world. And what is scary, what's dangerous about this is they kind of excite this radicalized base that reaches the subset of that radicalized base that's willing to do political violence, that's willing to take what people like MTG and Trump say to its logical conclusion. And then basically it puts our political system in those people's hands, because at any moment, those people can decide today's the day that we're going to have a violent episode in this country. Today's the day that I'm going to be in charge of the news. Like today's the day we're going to have a random act of violence. And that kind of like stochastic terrorism that these people are inspiring and pumping into the world means it's destabilizing, it's dangerous, and
also makes people not want to be involved in politics. Like, why on earth would you run for office to have some nut job show up at your house with a gun? You're just trying to pass like universal health care.
Yeah, and run for office, or just be like a nonpartisan election worker who get threats as well, The presenting sponsor of Pod Save America is Simply Safe. Nothing's more important than your family's safety, and Simply Safe Home Security wants to help you save money while you protect them. Because at Simply Safe, your safety is the only thing that matters.
You'll be safer than somebody in Shawshank Prison.
I was going to say they needed a Simply Safe, but to keep people in.
Right.
Andy Dufresne specifically.
We were talking before the ad. So Red says that the sewer pipe has 500 yards, but calls it just shy of half a mile. Keep going. Keep going.
When a threat is detected, Simply Safe's monitoring professionals promptly contact you and dispatch first responders to your home, even if you're away or unable to respond. 24/7 professional monitoring costs under $1 a day. That's less than half the cost of ADT's traditional plans. Simply Safe blankets your home in protection with advanced sensors for every room, window, and door, and even hazard sensors that instantly detect fires, floods, and other threats. Simply Safe's monitoring experts use proprietary advanced response technology to visually confirm when a break-in is real, so you can get the highest priority police dispatch. Lovett has Simply Safe.
Yep.
It's worked out well.
You bet it has. I set up a Simply Safe system.
You sure did.
And it worked so well. Really recommend it. It's easy to use, easy to set up. Very, very reliable, great customer service, nice equipment. Highly recommend. 10 out of 10. Get one.
Customize the perfect system for your home in just a few minutes at simplysafe.com/crooked. Save 20% on your Simply Safe security system when you sign up for an interactive monitoring plan and get your first month free. Visit simplysafe.com/crooked today to learn more. There's no safe like Simply Safe. Pod Save America is brought to you by Audible. Are you in need of a good story, an epic adventure, a chilling mystery?
I am.
If so, Tommy, Audible is a fantastic option. You can hear stories told by some of the world's biggest stars like Ethan Hawke, Kerry Washington, and Kevin Hart. With audiobooks, podcasts, and originals from top celebrities and Hollywood storytellers, Audible's a place where your imagination can run wild. As an Audible member, you can choose one title a month to keep from their entire catalog, including the latest bestsellers and new releases. All Audible members can access a wide selection of audiobooks and Audible originals that are included with membership, and more are added every month. You may be listening to Pod Save America on Audible right now. If not, you can find it on Audible, Stitcher, or wherever else you listen to your podcasts. What do you like, Tommy?
This reminds me, it's nice to mix in a good audiobook with your podcasts, right? Because, those are an hour and you're out. Sometimes we go a little long. But it's nice to have a book when you're doing a long drive. You really get immersed in the story.
Sometimes when the ads go really long.
Yeah, it's a good reminder. Sure.
I know. Let Audible help you discover new ways to laugh, to be inspired, or to be entertained. New members can try it for free for 30 days. Visit audible.com/crooked or text crooked to 500-500. That's 500-500. That's audible.com/crooked or text crooked to 500-500 to try Audible for free for 30 days. Audible.com/crooked. Pod Save America is brought to you by FrameBridge. FrameBridge makes it easier and more affordable than ever to frame your favorite things without ever leaving the house. Add a gallery wall to your home office or send an easy, foolproof gift, especially for all those weddings you have coming up. From art prints and posters to the photos sitting on your phone, you can FrameBridge just about anything.
500 yards is 0.28 miles.
Oh my God. Go to framebridge.com and upload your photo, or they'll send you packaging to safely mail in your physical pieces. Preview your item online in dozens of frame
I
styles.
love when we do this and these run out of order, too.
I know. And gallery wall layouts. Once you choose your favorite style, the experts at FrameBridge will custom frame your item and deliver your finished piece directly to your door, ready to hang.
It's not a real pipe. It could have been just shy of half a mile if that's what they wanted.
Let's talk about FrameBridge, the company that's paying us to advertise for them.
I put a Shawshank poster in a
If
frame.
he said
You put
800
Shawshank in a
yards,
frame?
if he said
What kind
800
of frame
yards,
did you use?
800 yards, just shy of half
Hey,
a mile.
you know who else was framed? Andy Dufresne.
Absolutely.
There you go. There you go.
Absolutely. We've all used FrameBridge. We love FrameBridge.
We love FrameBridge. I
I've
have
set up
FrameBridge all over my house.
John's walls.
I've used
my
it to frame all
walls.
kinds of things.
Adorned with FrameBridge. Their prices start at $39 and all shipping is free. You can even stop by a FrameBridge store if you're in New York, DC, Atlanta, Philly, Boston, or Chicago. Get started today. Frame your photos or send someone the perfect gift. Go to framebridge.com and use promo code CROOKED to save an additional 15% off your first order. Just go to framebridge.com, promo code CROOKED. Framebridge.com, promo code CROOKED. All right, speaking of the election, let's talk about the final month of the midterm campaign. Over the last few weeks, Republican candidates have started gaining on Democrats in the four big Senate races that could decide control. In Pennsylvania, John Fetterman's double-digit lead over Dr. Oz is down to a few points. In Georgia, Raphael Warnock is about 2 points ahead of Herschel Walker. In Nevada, Catherine Cortez Masto is trailing Adam Laxalt by about a point. And in Wisconsin, Mandela Barnes has lost his lead over Ron Johnson and is now trailing by about 2 points. Just for reference, Democrats need to win at least two of these races to hold the Senate. If they lose three, they lose the Senate, most likely. What do you guys think is happening here? Why are these Republican candidates doing better? Tommy?
I think it's probably a bunch of different factors. Like some of it is probably just kind of mean reversion. Like we live in a divided country. The numbers are going to move around, but ultimately these races are going to be tight. And, even when these polls were showing the Fetterman team up 10, like they would be the first ones to tell you, we ain't winning this race by 10.
Yeah.
There's just no chance of that. I do think some of the best polls that we saw over the summer came when the Dobbs decision was fresh and when people were really focused on and concerned about abortion rights. Those headlines fade. Hopefully the concern about that risk has not gone away, but it's out there. I think, people are, the news cycle has moved on. People were, I think, probably feeling a little better about gas prices consistently falling. There was a better economic sentiment. And then, Mitch McConnell's super PAC has just been hammering candidates for weeks now. Like they've been hitting them on crime. They're hitting Mandela Barnes on bail, getting rid of cash bail. So that's probably hurting their approvals. Biden's numbers still aren't great. Like the right track, wrong track aren't great. The stock market was cratering until today, basically. So we'll see. I also have zero faith that the pollsters have figured out how to deal with these response bias issues, but that's another conversation.
Right, and that could be what was going on with some of those polls in the summer as well, after around the Dobbs decision. Lovett, what do you think's going on?
Yeah, the only thing I'd add that Tommy missed was the Dobbs decision also was paired with a series of legislative victories for Biden.
Yep. Right.
And together, it was just a moment that I think Democrats felt really energized and like acutely focused. And, we always knew that the Republicans will turn out their base. The Republicans will have a huge, huge number. And I think the polls are bearing that out now. So I don't know.
I think the challenge is that the fundamentals of this election are still, every single voter I talk to, when I ask, like, what are the issues most concerning to you? Inflation, right? And now gas prices are the most, like, sensitive measure of inflation. But for most of these people I talked to, housing kept coming up. It was just like, I can't afford my rent. And I never think I think I'm never going to be able to live on my own. I'm not going to be able to afford a home. And for people who don't follow politics closely, it's, and I'm blaming the party in charge. Now, these people also brought up that they were angry about Dobbs, but the thing that's always on their mind every single day is, can I make the rent? Can I pay my bills? And I think that's working against. Now, some of this, to go race by race, I'd say, like in Pennsylvania, some of these polls, like you said, Tommy, they never thought they were going to win by 10, the Fetterman folks. Some of the polls just show basically Oz consolidating Republicans. Yeah. Right? So that's why he's sort of moving up.
And that was always going to happen. They're always going to come home. Now, have you guys heard about the scandal rocking the polling nerd world?
Which one? Go ahead. Give it to us.
It has to do with the gang at Trafalgar.
No.
Apparently, someone on Twitter noticed that their response rates in their polls across states and demographics are always the same, which is just very weird because usually they vary from poll to poll or across different demographic groups. So, like, do you need 10,000 people to reach 100? Do you need to call 15,000 people to reach 100? Like, it can vary dramatically. In some outlet called splitticket.org wrote it up, and they found that the Trafalgar response rate was almost always identical. It was between 1.43 and 1.46. I don't know what that means at all, but that was not the case in their 2016 polling that everyone mocked. So, big scandal.
Can we unskew some polls?
We got to get some Nates.
Can you unskew some for us?
Unskew this, whatever happened here.
That is.
Isn't the real scandal that all of these pollsters now are trying to figure out how to poll, and so they get some terribly small response rate and then just adjust the numbers to some expectation or party registration or some model for what they think the electorate will look like. So in reality, the model is dictating the outcome of the poll and not the poll the model.
Yeah.
You're here. Yeah. No matter what, you're guessing on turnout at some point, and that's what's gonna sort of influence your poll more than anything else, which is why we don't take individual polls. Polls are snapshots in time, and they're not always all that accurate. The trends of polls are usually more accurate and helpful, and so
and that's the conversation we're having.
That's the conversation we're having. Noticing that the trend is getting a little tight,
We're talking about
Trend ain't
trends.
feeling
We're talking
good.
about trends.
But you're right. So I think a lot of money on crime attacks, especially that's been hurting Fetterman and Barnes a little bit. And then in Georgia's a case where there's just very few swing voters left in that state. And Raphael Warnock is going to have to hit, and same thing with Stacey Abrams, they're going to have to make sure that the electorate ends up being 30% black and that they get really high black turnout. And it was really hard to do that, and they shattered all kinds of records in the Senate runoff in 2021. But to repeat that again is very, very tricky. So that's going to be close. And then in Nevada, talk about like places where the pandemic hit the economy hard. Like Nevada is one of the hardest hit states because of the tourism industry there, and housing has been a disaster there for a long, long time. And so you have, Cortez Masto sort of struggling as the incumbent there. And there's also a lot of independent voters in Nevada also.
And she's unfortunately not running against someone like Mastriano or Oz or Ron Johnson, who on a daily basis, or Herschel Walker, that on a daily basis are saying something embarrassing, ridiculous, terrible. So it's just not getting the same level of attention.
Yeah, no, not at all.
Which is ridiculous because like Adam Laxalt embraces the big lie and is a big Trump guy, but it's all relative at this point now.
Right.
Yeah. So it's
it's not the same level of gaffes coming out of, it's just not getting the same level of attention.
Well, in the Fetterman folks have just done a good job of like making ads that are catchy, fun, go super viral. Now their closing message seems to be focusing on the fact that Dr. Oz is a snake oil salesman and he sold like bogus miracle cures to people to make money for himself. And it folds into that broader message about how he can't represent Pennsylvania well because he does not care about you and doesn't even live anywhere near you.
Should we talk about the dogs too?
Apparently, this guy did a bunch of evil testing on animals. It's the worst. I can't even read it.
There was a whistleblower. There was a report today that a whistleblower basically said that, like, as part of the research he was conducting, there were a lot of dogs that were terribly mistreated, and the details are horrific.
Horrific.
Yeah. So
When he was at Columbia ended up cutting ties with Oz. Over like 300 dogs were killed. And it was hard to read the story.
and violated the Animal Welfare Act. And obviously, like, I don't want to be, listen, it's gross. Don't read it.
It's pretty bad.
Support Fetterman. It's interesting watching Georgia too, because Warnock, I mean, I think he's clearly going to try to keep disqualifying Herschel Walker. And boy, if you need more information to do that, like, I'm a little worried about you. But Walker, I was reading some stuff in the AJC, and Walker apparently seems to be worried about his lack of support from Republican voters. So he's kind of tacking to the right in these closing months. He said, like, the other day, he said, Jesus might not recognize you when you get to heaven if you're a transgender person, like crazy shit. He also endorsed Lindsey Graham's 15-week federal abortion ban. He's been criticizing Medicaid expansion, whereas Warnock is still taking a much more traditional campaign path. He's talking about bipartisanship, working with Ted Cruz on things, Tommy Tuberville. The interesting thing that happened recently is the White House, the press secretary weighed into the question of whether the Atlanta Braves should change their name, which just like kicked up the completely predictable culture war debate that I think is probably not at all what Warnock or Stacey Abrams wants to be talking about in their closing weeks. So, this thing's very much in flux.
Yeah, let me ask, what do you guys think Democratic candidates should be doing to fight back right now, these Senate candidates? Like, how much are these final weeks about disqualifying your opponent versus making a positive case for yourself? Tommy, you brought up Warnock. Like, when I was in Atlanta with those voters, I sat with a group of young black voters who identified as moderate Democrats, and they had all heard all the bad shit about Herschel Walker. They're like, he's crazy. He's crazy. And then they're like, but I feel like all I hear from Warnock's campaign is how bad he is, and I don't know what Warnock would do.
Yeah.
And it's always this tough balance, right? Because you want people to know how bad Herschel Walker is, how bad Dr. Oz is, how bad all these candidates are, but at the same time, like, how do you balance that with, the need to have a positive agenda? Lovett, what do you think?
It's also especially challenging when you're talking about Ron Johnson, when you're talking about Dr. Oz, when you're talking about Herschel Walker, when it's not just that you obviously need to drive this negative message along with your own positive message for your campaign. It's that every day provides new fodder, new negative fodder about your opponent that you do think is useful, while you still have to do this other work of finding a way to get your positive message out there too. Like, the Washington Post comes out with a story today, we were hearing this yesterday, walking through all the different ways Dr. Oz has spent years grifting and selling just completely debunked weight loss medicine, Alzheimer's medicine, cancer medicine, just to make money. You obviously want to drive that, but how do you get it back to what Fetterman will do on voting rights, what Fetterman wants to do to protect abortion access? I think that's been the challenge for the last 5 years of dealing with these radicalized kind of goofy candidates. You have to find ways to drive your positive message too.
Yeah, look, I think that they all are going to have, it's going to be case by case. They're all going to have research. They're all going to know what seems to work, what drives Democratic voters, what might turn off Republican voters. They'll all probably know their own, what they think is a win number, how many voters they need to turn out to win the election, how many voters they think their opponent needs to turn out or is currently on track to turn out. So you'll make decisions accordingly. I don't know the right balance. I do think it's going to be case by case. But with someone like a Dr. Oz or Herschel Walker, you have a lot more to work with. So you're probably emphasizing that an awful lot, or at least, the super PACs that swoop in the last month of a campaign are going to do it for you.
Yeah, I do think some of the ads that end up being most effective are not purely positive or purely negative, but like comparative ads. And so with someone like Dr. Oz, they have now done a fantastic job framing him as this out of touch weirdo who's a grifter. And so you say that he's that, and he's going to then, vote for these policies in the Senate that are also out of touch. Whereas John Fetterman is going to fight for working people by doing X, Y, and Z, And I do think even in the latest poll in Pennsylvania that has Fetterman only up by 3, it was 45-42, he still has an advantage 51-29 for best understands concerns of Pennsylvanians,
That's
right?
good.
Even though Oz now has an advantage on policies that will improve voters' economic circumstances, 39-32. So it's interesting that they still think Fetterman's on their side, but for some reason they think that Oz.
There's a little bit of a
policies will be better.
backlash to all the Jersey stuff. I think people were like, you talk about him being from Jersey all the time. What are you going to do for us? Like, okay, fair, but hey, you remember the Jersey thing, so it's an effective campaign strategy.
Yeah, the other piece of it too is you have the other piece of it is that the Oz campaign is launching a bunch of negative attacks against Fetterman, some really unfair kind of fear mongering on crime, for example, and they have to find ways to push back on that without giving into that. And I think they've really tried. The Fetterman campaign has tried to really not be defensive, to kind of find ways to talk about Fetterman's record and what he wants to do on criminal justice reform, while kind of brushing back some of the more outrageous assertions that these super PAC ads and these Oz ads are making.
The person who did this best in 2020 was Warnock.
Yeah.
He had we're back to dogs again. He had the ad of him like walking that little beagle. It wasn't actually his, but it worked really well. He had an ad where he was like, I don't eat pizza with a fork and knife or something. It was just like kind of campy, fun stuff, being like, they're going to try to demonize me, but I'm just a regular human being.
I have a pitch. Here's a pitch. We get somebody who in scrubs, kind of who's meant to look like Dr. Oz, and we put them in front of a wheat thresher and have them put puppies into it. And then we just have
Holy
Fetterman
shit,
next
I
to
did
the
not know we were
thresher.
gonna-
Have the thresher just being like, I'll protect abortion access. I'll protect voting rights. Like I believe in decriminalizing marijuana,
Fetterman campaign, turn off the podcast.
I think it'll go viral.
I think it will.
I think it'll go far.
I agree with you on that.
Remember when there was that ad where Paul Ryan pushed an old person off a cliff and they were really upset?
No.
You remember it.
I do remember that.
You remember it.
Yeah, that's a good one. I think Dan created that ad. All right. On a potentially happier note, the Twitter ratios must be working because one of the Nates is out with the take about how it's time to take Democrats' chances in the House seriously.
Terrific.
Nate Cohn argues that Republicans are still favored, but that redistricting didn't give them a significant structural advantage, and the limited House polling we do have shows extremely close races, so Democrats could pull it out with a few lucky breaks. Lovett, what do you think of Nate's take? You buy it?
First of all, so much of the take's fine. I'm not critical of the take. It's a fine and fulsome take. Let it exist. It's great. I guess it's just sort of the whole point of it is saying that there's actually not that much polling of individual House races. And one of the points he makes in the piece is that we poll Senate races much more than we poll House races. Some of those Senate races have shown positive signs for Democrats. Therefore, if we had the same amount of House race polls, maybe we would be seeing the same positive signs, except none of us believe the Senate race polls. So all I take away from this article is we could win the House and Senate. We can lose them both. Anything beyond that is too specific to be predicted.
Now's the time of year when everyone makes sure they've written articles taking each side of an issue so that you can point to them after the fact. So I'd like to make sure we do that before November. Someone write that down. What is very hard, I think, for all of us political junkies to internalize, because we pay such close attention to this stuff and the stakes are so high, is that most of these elections could go either way. They could be decided by events that haven't happened yet. The outcome could be different if it was a week or 2 weeks earlier, right? Like I think 2016, if that presidential was a week after the Access Hollywood tape, I think Hillary Clinton would have been president, but it wasn't. And that's sort of like maddening to try to come to grips with. So we'll see. And
most people aren't like us. They're not political news junkies who've made up their mind one way or the other, either which party they're voting for, which candidate they're voting for, or whether they're going to vote at all.
My biggest anxiety is around gas prices and the fact that the Saudis and OPEC are now cutting production to keep prices stable and elevated, and stopping the precipitous decline that we had seen because, we're going into a recession. That is very worrisome to me.
Yeah. Well, that's something that we can't control.
Well,
I'll tell you one thing.
We're going to fist bump those guys.
I earlier today, look, I'm in Pennsylvania right now, talking to the people, and
Lovett's at a diner. For those of you who can't.
He's at a Wawa, I think.
And I was talking to people at some sort of a market I don't know, where people buy produce or something. I don't know. For me, it comes fully in a salad already, so I don't know. I've never seen some of these vegetables.
So you're a Sweet Green.
Pre-cut. No. This was like a market. This was like a supermarket. Like it had lots
okay.
of different vegetables, but separate little areas for each one, not in
Sold
like a salad bar.
Independently? Okay.
I was like, I didn't know what to do there. But I asked somebody a question, and they were basically, they hated Mastriano, but they were actually undecided about Fetterman versus Oz. And then I told them about the dog thing.
Huh.
And that was effective. People do not like hearing about the dog thing.
They don't.
It's, yeah.
So I'm going to say
visceral.
that dog thing is going to really
Especially
matter.
with like normal people who don't pay close attention to politics. But they hear that, they're like, wait a minute, that doesn't sound good. I don't want that. I don't want that candidate.
And some of the people that already like Fetterman, they said that the dog thing wasn't surprising to them about Dr. Oz, which I think is a really sad thing about Dr. Oz as a personal brand.
Because he kind of just reads as a sociopath.
On the House issue, I thought just to get your head around what it takes for the Democrats to win the House, like the New York Times on September 2nd had a very helpful interactive chart that was based on the Cook political ratings. So like if both parties win every district where they're currently favored, Democrats would have 191 seats, Republicans would have 213, and there would be 31 toss-ups. So you need 218 to win the House, right? So in that scenario, Republicans only have to win 5 toss-ups. Democrats have to win 27. Now, is that possible? Well, that's basically what Republicans did in 2020. And of course, Democrats kept the House, but we were a little surprised that we didn't do better. Mm-hmm. So it's possible, but that just goes to show you how tricky it is for Democrats to pull the inside straight here. Yeah. But possible. But possible.
Of course, that's possible. But like another way to say that is if it does turn out that we retain the Senate and the House, it will mean that there was an underlying trend that we just didn't see.
I mean, look, I think Georgia is going to be sort of the most interesting example of this kind of happening simultaneously, where it's clear that Stacey Abrams is really betting on higher Democratic turnout, a more motivated Democratic base based on the Dobbs decision, and Warnock is doing more of a I'll work with all parties kind of bipartisan approach to try to reach the middle. We'll see which works. We don't know.
They need to do both. Both of them need to do both is what it's.
Yeah, but you can kind of emphasize one in the close, and clearly there's a distinction there.
The point
I do have a little candle. I do have a little candle I light that just says, this year, we don't see the Dobbs wave coming. That's the candle that I've lit. But I don't know. I don't know if it's real.
I hope so.
I think the point of all this is because this is going to be close, because there are so many undecided voters, because there's so many people undecided about voting, we can all make a difference here. Go to votesaveamerica.com, sign up, grab a region. We'll put you to work, donating, volunteering, calling folks, texting folks. It really, I mean, like you said, I keep thinking, the Fetterman winning Pennsylvania by 10 points was never going to happen. Like all of these states have now been super close for many election cycles. Mm-hmm. They all come down to tens of thousands of votes, which means that everyone can have an impact in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and check out the Vote Save America page. If you click donate, there's lots of different ways you can put your money to work. You can go to secretaries of state and attorney generals, state legislators, the Senate, the House, voter protection, abortion funds. There's lots of different options out there.
Then there's one that just goes to Tommy. Don't click that one.
It's my Venmo. Yeah, please click on that.
All right. When we come back, we will talk to our old pal Cody Keenan about his new book, Grace. Pod Save America is brought to you by Athletic Greens. It's now easier than ever to start your day off right with 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens in a single scoop of AG1. AG1 is NSF certified for sport, the gold standard for professional athletes who have to adhere to strict rules regarding supplements and nutritional products. If it's good enough for them, it's good enough for me.
That's right.
We've all been on AG1 for years now. We love it.
Big fan.
Doesn't taste like it's super healthy. We're not endorsing a shot of wheatgrass. It's got this mild tropical taste that you're going to look forward to each morning, and when you don't want the jitteriness of coffee. I was too jittery to even say that right because I was drinking too much coffee this morning. But you still want the same mental clarity and alertness. That's when you're going to want AG1. Tommy, what does your routine look like with AG1?
Look, I think the people know it goes in the smoothie if I have one. It's a great compliment to every flavor.
Yeah, and it helps with my digestive system,
Yeah,
as
'cause Jon
everyone
is,
knows who also listens to The Wilderness. Athletic Greens wants you to know it isn't just for athletes like Tommy. Ooh, like Tommy's in parentheses.
Sweet. Thanks.
Not an athlete.
No.
It's for anyone that believes if you start strong, it's easier to finish that way. It's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition.
Just gritty.
He is gritty.
Claw my way on that team.
It's just one scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills or supplements like your grandma
2
used
a days,
to take.
3 a days. I'm there.
Yeah, it says always. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting
Weights.
vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first pit
take it all.
purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/crooked. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/crooked to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Now a word from our sponsor, BetterHelp. When you're faced with challenges in life, it can be tough to train your brain to stay in problem-solving mode. But when you learn how to find your own solutions, there's no better feeling. Talk about a time you got stuck focusing on problems instead of solutions. How might that situation go better with a different mindset?
Well, I was the American responsible for fucking with that pipeline in Europe.
Oh, you did that?
That's
you
I'm the one
sabotaged
that
it?
did it.
Do you know how much methane you released?
A therapist can help you become a better problem solver, making it easier to accomplish your goals no matter how big or small. If you're thinking of giving therapy a try, BetterHelp's a great option. It's convenient, accessible, affordable, and entirely online. Look, it's a great option, BetterHelp, for therapy if you want to start therapy, because it's online. You don't have to leave your house. You don't have to go in person.
Give it a shot.
Get matched with a therapist
What do
after
you have to
filling out
lose?
a brief survey, and you can switch therapists at any time. How about that?
How about that?
Try a new therapist every week if you want. When you want to be
Date around.
when you want to be a better problem solver, therapy can get you there. Visit betterhelp.com/PSA today to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/PSA. On the pod today, our buddy, our pal, the former White House director of speechwriting and current author of a brand new book that's out today called Grace, President Obama and the 10 Days in the Battle for America, Cody Keenan. Welcome to the pod.
It's good to see you guys in the flesh.
Barack
see you too,
Obama's
buddy.
greatest living chief speechwriter.
Jesus Christ.
Right off the bat. It's weird interviewing you. It's just like people don't know this, but you're like the member of our friend group,
our
that's
family.
just, that people don't hear on the pod.
I don't talk to anybody more than you guys, and I don't ever get to see you either.
I
These
know.
digs are amazing, by the way.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
The first time I did the pod, it was like the 5th or 6th episode ever, and you were still renting radio space.
We were some random radio place. Now we're here.
Yeah.
Now we're here. Look at
yeah.
this. All right, so you wrote this book.
Still like Pompeii out there, though. I gotta trick people to come in.
Okay, it's not going to be a debate about remote work, but Cody, tell us about the premise of the book and how you landed on writing about these 10 days in the White House. Of all the days you were there, which we should say
8
was
years.
all 8 years.
Just 2,922
Masochist.
days, yeah.
Okay, you're not someone you were counting.
So Grace is about 10 days in June 2015 that are bookended by the massacre in Charleston in a black church and Barack Obama's eulogy in Charleston where he sang Amazing Grace. And in between, you also had this kind of extraordinary series of events where the Supreme Court was going to decide on Obamacare and whether or not millions of people got to keep their insurance, and marriage equality, whether or not millions of people would be deemed second-class citizens or be able to get married like the rest of us. After the shooting, the Confederate flag starts coming down over public spaces in the South, and all this happens over a span of 10 days. And it was like all these kind of great unanswered questions about America were coming to the fore in this exhausting and exhilarating way.
And you were in there just writing so many versions of all of these speeches.
That's my favorite part. Like 5 speeches about one Supreme Court case, given all the different possibilities.
Yeah, and we'd done this before. You were there in 2012 when we had to do this the first time. It was in front of the Supreme Court in a sham decision. So we had to prepare speeches for what if the Supreme Court says, no, there's not a right to marriage equality. What if the Supreme Court says, no, all of you are losing your health insurance right away? And those are pretty bleak. And then in the background, we're deciding whether or not to write a eulogy.
So your book made me deeply miss the White House, Barack Obama, all of our former colleagues. It also made me deeply grateful that I'm not a speechwriter anymore because I was like tired reading what you went through that week. Weren't you tired, Lovett? Didn't it bring back memories of how like the drafts, all the people, the committees of people giving you the fucking edits?
It's very anxiety provoking, and just the fact that it's never over till it's over. You never know what's going to happen when you hand it in.
You know,
just
I wasn't a
for it to be ripped
speechwriter.
apart.
The thing that really jumps out at me, and I remember this from you guys, is the isolation. Because like we all went home at 8 or 9 o'clock at night, and you guys just sat there at your desks all night long until the thing was done. till the sun came up sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes I go home. Tommy and I lived together for a few years, and I took Lovett's.
Yeah, you
That's
took
right.
him.
Yeah,
That's right.
When I get to Hollywood.
and there are a few things more depressing when I'd be working at our dining table, and Tommy's coming down in the morning because he's awake. And I'm just like, he's just like, oh no.
Yeah. Oof. You all right?
Yeah.
Need anything?
It's
Yeah.
rough. You develop a really healthy relationship with self-loathing as a speechwriter.
It's a horrible feeling. It's a hard. It's really reminding me of this. Well, it's there is a thing. There is a part about being a speechwriter.
We were White House speechwriters.
Listen, yeah, honestly, wouldn't take it off the resume. But there's this part of it that I think is hard to describe, which is politics is a lot of hard-nosed decisions. It's even policy. It's a lot of it's numbers, it's math, it's politics, it's 30-minute meetings, it's people moving really fast and trying to figure things out. And then there's speech writing, which sits inside of it, that doesn't exist in 30-minute increments. It's days of thinking. It's trying to find art and magic and kind of beauty in these moments, and nobody gives a fuck about it. And everyone's like, well, this isn't as good as it should be. It's like, no, of course not. It's really hard.
Yeah.
That part sucks.
It sucks. And sometimes you don't come up with that art and beauty and magic. And everybody's, we would shut our doors. And I stole something from Jon when he was chief speechwriter at State of the Union time. We'd put like a skull on the door that means go away.
I forgot about that. We had a lot. We ended up having a lot of stuff on the door to tell people do not come in.
Yeah,
and they all came in anyway.
There was like a
not
joy
come.
meter, and
Do not come.
people would barge in anyway.
Yeah, can you talk about tell the story in that part of the book where you're just sitting there and you have to write the eulogy for Charleston, and you have basically just the heading and a blank page, and you're trying, but everyone just keeps coming into the office.
There was a day, I think it was like day 7 of the book, and at the time you're not like, okay, today's day 6. Like these days didn't really coalesce in my head till later, but there was this day where I was just trying to get to it, and every 5 minutes someone would come in with something else. It was just, my assistant Susanna called it a little box of interruptions, and you just can't focus until everyone's gone and the email's kind of slow to a trickle.
And Cody, there was this fundamental tension about whether President Obama was going to speak at the eulogy at all. You write pretty honestly about it, how he just didn't want to because he was so cynical about having to give eulogies in the wake of gun violence. And then he ultimately made the decision to sing at this event. And you write in the book how you were like, Mr. President, Barry, I want to see you singing up there. Can you talk about how you convinced him to spread his wings?
Well, as you said, we almost didn't do the eulogy at all because after Newtown in 2012, he kind of set his second-term agenda aside to go after guns whatever way he could, whether background checks or whatnot, and that failed in the Senate. Well, it didn't just fail; it was blocked by Republicans. And after that, he said, that was about as mad and cynical as I've ever seen him. And he said, what do I do the next time this happens? I don't want to give another eulogy after this because it makes it seem like this is okay, and we just give a eulogy and move on. Charleston was different. You kind of have to after that one, but he still didn't want to even 6 days afterwards.
Why did he have to after that one?
So you've got the first black president, and you've got this racist slaughter, carried out under the Confederate banner, and it did we didn't have a hard and fast rule as to when he spoke after eulogies, but that one felt like it. So there were some people in the White House pushing for it. He didn't want to until he saw what the families did, which is they forgave the killer, and that was powerful, and that kind of brought him along. But to get to the singing, he had added the lyrics to Amazing Grace the night before the speech. And he tore this speech up. I gave him a draft, and it was the only time he's ever just drawn a line through 2 pages and rewrote them longhand, which is
that probably felt
that
good.
was tough. And I described that in full detail in Grace, which is out today. And so that morning, he goes out to the Rose Garden and gives a speech about marriage equality. The Supreme Court finds a right to it. There's these joyous scenes, but we're still mindful that we're about to go eulogize 9 dead people. And he stands up on the helicopter and he goes, if it feels right, I might sing it. And I was just like, okay. What do you say to that? But he had a healthy ego about singing, which is all because he sang Al Green at some fundraiser,
I know.
and everyone in the audience went insane.
And he never let people stop hearing about that.
Yeah,
he was.
He's
he was so proud of himself.
Yeah, but if you're watching the eulogy, which you should, it's great. He pauses for 11 seconds before he starts singing, and there's only 5 of us on Earth who heard him say he was going to sing. So I asked him afterwards, what was with the pause? Was that for dramatic effect? Were you deciding? He goes, no, man, the thing about Amazing Grace? And I was like, no. He goes, you have to start really, really low, or by the time you get to A Wretch Like Me, your voice cracks. He's like, so I was preparing.
I find that E flat.
Yeah, E flat.
When I read that, I was like, had he tried to sing Amazing Grace before many times in public?
Toothbrush mirror.
I look. I don't think that was the first time that day he'd sang it. I don't think he just went out
few
there.
practice runs.
I think
in
there was
residence before?
I do think in the echo of a bathroom, you think this is going to work. I can do this.
Can I ask you all a question? One of my favorite parts of the book, Cody, you're talking about writing the State of the Union address one year, which you all loved doing.
That's my favorite.
Incredibly rewarding, fun
It's
part
my
of the
favorite
job.
speech.
Everybody
So
loved
much
it.
fun.
Wonderful.
You turn in like the best draft you've ever turned in. Obama calls you into his office to discuss it. The note included something about Miles Davis. Can you tell that story and how you felt about that guidance, whether it was helpful?
Yeah, so it was the third consecutive Christmas I ruined drafting a speech, and I gave it to him 8 days early and felt great about it. And I hear nothing after I give it to him, which is really frustrating because he always asks for an early draft, right? And then he doesn't get back to you. So his assistant calls me upstairs. I go up. He's sitting in the dining room off the Oval Office, and he goes, "Sit down." And I'm just like, "Oh God, what, am I going to have to like redo an 8,000 word speech?" He's like, "How you doing?" I'm like, "I'm fine. What is this? How's the speech?" And he goes, "Well, I think we're in the best shape we've been 8 days out." I'm like, "Great, but we can make it better." So he goes, "You ever listen to Miles Davis?" And I'm like, "I don't know, maybe. Why?" He's like, "So everything's in here, and I need some quiet moments. I need some spaces. You know what they say about Miles Davis? It's the notes you don't play. It's the silences." I'm like, "Whatever." So he goes, "I want you to go home tonight, have a drink, listen to some Miles Davis, and find me the silences." I was like, "Okay." I'll do it.
First of all, I believe that's Lisa Simpson says that on the Simpsons at a jazz show, and it's a way of her seeming pretentious. She goes, "No, listen to the notes. He's not playing. Quiet as anytime you're not
Right,
singing,
it's
just
pause
wait a
here.
second."
Here you go, boss. I added some pauses.
I'm not going to say who it was, but there was someone like the day of that speech too who staked out the bathroom in the ground floor of the West Wing, and as soon as I came out to go to the bathroom, jumped up and was like, "Can we add this to the speech?" I said, "No."
Something that struck me is, so there's big debate in the Oval Office over whether Obama should speak at the eulogy, and at one point he goes on this rant about the Confederate flag still hanging up at the state capitol, and he says, "It's not subtle. Black folks have to walk past it every day. How would a Jewish community feel if people hung a swastika somewhere? The flag isn't an embrace of history. That's a talking point. Come on, people." And then he looks at you and smirks and says, "Obviously, we shouldn't say that."
So I put it in the book.
But then, like, it's so like reading it in 2022. My first reaction is like, why? Why wouldn't you say that?
Yeah.
You know, but it at the time, I get why he wouldn't have said that, but it felt like, wow, we really have. I wonder what Obama's presidency would be like right now, and how his discussions about race would be right now.
Yeah.
And can you talk about like why at the time he felt like he shouldn't say that?
Yeah, I mean, it'd be impossible to know right now. Everything has changed so dramatically because of the Trump years. At the time, I mean, he would have gotten 12 red hens if he said that, right? All the D.C. pearl clutchers would be like, "Oh, you can't equate the Confederate flag to a swastika. Why not?"
Yeah.
You know, and his point too about the fact that the flag was over the Charleston State House. They put that up in the 1960s.
Right.
You know, that was
Direct
like
response to civil rights.
Yeah, that was not just hanging on to the Civil War, but we always had to be mindful, even if it was frustrating, as to how different audiences would interpret what the first black president said.
Yeah.
You know, he had to walk this tightrope that nobody else ever did. And one of the things that made me happiest was when Ta-Nehisi Coates wrote once, "For 8 years, Barack Obama walked on ice and never fell," and it was just like
I
a
always
huge sigh
think
of
about
relief.
that.
I do
Because
think
that's exactly that was. I mean, it was the best summation of what he had to go through on race from the moment he decided to step into politics until he left the White House. And you know, if you were outside the White House or you were not him, you could criticize it or you could do whatever. But when you're that guy, when you're the first black president and you're doing it, you have to think about all those audiences and the people that you haven't brought along yet.
And sorry,
No.
that's unsatisfying because we were all, you know, young progressives and wanted to shout right and wrong from the rooftop, and to tell yourself that you can't is a very frustrating thing to do.
Yeah, I do think all that's true. I do wonder how the Trump years have changed a certain way of thinking about decorum and not riling people up and things you can say outside of race on marriage equality and a host of issues where there was an expectation that mostly falls to Democrats that there's certain places you can't go, certain truths you can't tell. And I do wonder if one of the, like, I think back now and I wonder, like, if you knew someone like Trump was coming, how much more honest could you have been?
Yeah.
Like what are the things that Trump opens up that we realize were rules we actually shouldn't have been following?
Yeah, I think about that all the time. What I would do if we could go back and write differently, knowing what was coming. But at the time, we didn't have the luxury of doing that. There was we were constrained a lot in ways that were frustrating and difficult.
I will say that I think the whole concept of grace, the theme of the eulogy and the book, still holds up today. I mean, to me, I mean, maybe we're just former Obama staffers who are still living in that time, but like I do think even it's funny reading it after the Trump era, or still in the midst of the era that we're in, it still feels like grace is something that we're short on right now, but that we could probably use.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like people still want people like this in the White House and everywhere in life. I have to, because what alternative is there?
Yeah.
I love in the book. I mean, look, as we mentioned at the top, Cody and I lived together for several years. 3 of us in a group house. We paid like $3,000 a month, which made government salaries go a lot further. And then your now wife, Kristen, basically moved in. And I love how you talk about Kristen's job at the White House on the research team and how that rolled the occasional grenade into your marriage. Can you tell that story a little bit?
Yeah, Kristen was one of our fact checkers. That's how we met. She would fact check everything we wrote, and it was so frustrating. I already see Lovett ready to tee off.
I have nothing. I'm just trying to get something.
We kill ourselves on these drafts and then submit them, and these wonderful fact checkers, including my then girlfriend, will just send you back. Here are all the things you got wrong that you need to fix, and it's just relentlessly frustrating. And the fact that we ended up getting married, I think, is a true testament to our love.
That's right.
I remember.
Let's be honest. Some of those fact checks are a little overly cautious.
There was one of them. This is the one I always remember, which is I was writing a speech for President Obama to deliver at NASA, or maybe it was just a speech about science generally. But regardless, I made reference to the first photo of the Earth taken from far away, called Earthrise, and it was a photo taken after 8 revolutions of the capsule in space. The capsule rotated 8 times, and then the astronaut took a photo, and the fact checker response was, well, the capsule had been facing away, which means that it had to spin 8.5 times, which meant it was more than 8 times.
They're good.
And I was like,
They're really good.
I was like, I hear you. I hear what you're saying. I receive this. If we get in trouble, I'll take responsibility for not adding them more than 8 times.
Was that what you think? Which speechwriter do you guys think was the angriest in the responses to the fact checker?
Was that the trip when you pissed off Buzz Aldrin?
No, I believe that was a second incident.
Got it.
That was a separate trip where Buzz Aldrin was punching me in the face. And in hindsight, honestly, my only regret is that I didn't go further, because this is an anecdote about Buzz Aldrin not punching me in the face. How much better is an anecdote about Buzz Aldrin actually punching me in the face? I'd have loved a black eye from Buzz Aldrin. I'd speak it as eulogy. That'd be awesome. Punch me in the face, Buzz Aldrin. I'll come to you now. He's still around. Don't you think?
You were, yeah. you were among the fact checkers' least favorites, but Rhodes has a special place in their hearts because he just wouldn't reply.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Ben would just not.
Just ignore them.
You write about always like feeling like you'll be exposed as a fraud in the White House, which I think is like a feeling all of us had every day in the White House.
What am I doing here?
Like, how did you deal with that?
I don't know that I ever did. I dealt with it by killing myself to like just get every draft as good as I possibly could. Like, what right did we have to be there? What right did I have to be, chief speechwriter for the first black president at 32 years old? That's insane. But I also think it is a testament to our White House that I think a lot of people had imposter syndrome and felt that way, because how many people do you think in the Trump White House had imposter syndrome? They all felt like they deserved to be there, and look what that got us.
Yeah. No, it is. I think when you look around, at some point you look around at everyone else you're working with, and you're like, we're it.
Yeah.
That's it. There's no one else.
I actually think I disagree. I think the Trump people did know they were imposters, and they were unfortunate. I think the issue is not that they didn't have imposter syndrome. I think they thought they were imposters and they were right. Like, they were imposters and they were unqualified.
I like this take.
They were the dregs of the dregs, and they deep down they knew it. That's why they always took photos behind the Oval Office desk like tourists. They knew on some level that they were just visiting, but that doesn't mean they won't be back. Just saying.
It's on this point, one of the most important emails that Fav's ever sent me, and I don't know if I've ever told you this, was when we were all just struggling with speeches. You emailed me at midnight one night on a Saturday when you were working on the 2012 convention speech. And it was just this really unique rant from you that you don't usually do. It's like, I can't do this. I don't know what I'm doing. I hate this.
Oh, I got a bunch of those. Yeah. I got a bunch of those from Jon.
And it was the first time I was like, oh my God, Jon feels
I don't
this
know,
way
man.
too.
I can't do this anymore. I can't do this. Yeah. And you guys always pull it off.
The only time you ever talked to me like that is when you took that edible that was too big and you called me in the middle of the night.
That was.
And
after
I was
the
like,
White
and I was like,
House.
you're not gonna die.
After the White
You're not.
House.
You're gonna actually be
My first
fine.
event,
And
I
I was like, John's calling me. Oh, something's wrong.
You're not having a heart attack. You're okay.
No, well, speech writing too is all about like how many people you have helping you. Like in the beginning of the Obama campaign, when it was just me and Adam Frankel, even before we hired Rhodes, there was a time where I was like, I think I have to quit. I can't do this. There's too many speeches. There's like 3 sets of remarks a day. Like there's only so much you can write every day. And then once we got to the White House and we had a bigger team, it was a little bit better. But it never fully goes away.
No.
Can I ask a question? Like, you guys are all genuinely humble people, at least 2/3 of you, and just kidding. But like, everyone sees the feedback that comes in, right? You see the praise, the profiles of people. How did you guys deal with knowing that like there was part of a speech you could control? You could write something that's really great prose, but then sometimes there's just a moment that elevates whatever it is he says, whether it's the draft you wrote or the singing.
Yeah.
It's kind of out of your control, right?
It's totally out of your control. People ask, they're like, did you tell him to sing? I'm like, no, you don't sing here, sir. What was always kind of frustrating was some of the best moments came from him. We would try as hard as we could, and then he would take it to a higher place.
I guess I always liked that and was always okay with it. Maybe because, like, when I signed up to work for Barack Obama, he had just done the 2004 convention speech, one of the most famous convention speeches in history, wrote it himself, didn't think he needed a speechwriter. And I was like, I'll work for this guy, but like, I'm never gonna be at his level because he's fucking Barack Obama. He's the one running for office. So it's like, if I can give him drafts that are like decent and he takes them to the next level, that'll be enough. And I always like, one of my favorite moments in every speechwriting process was actually getting back his edits. Mm-hmm. Now, if the edits came back and it was like a line through the paper or a come see me, that was not my favorite part. But when he really dug in and there'd just be like a ton of writing on the page, I would get excited because I'm like, all right, what did he do to this to make it really, really good?
Yeah.
And it's a little bit of a cheat because I'm like, yeah, I guess that was my job, but whatever, he did it and it's great now.
Yeah, the most satisfying, right, is like small edits throughout and then an arrow on the side of the page and you turn it over and there's just 2 paragraphs to go right before the end. And you're just like, oh, those sound just like him.
Yeah.
and the way that I always felt about it was that like, I think part of it is that the like, the brokenness of the people that go into politics, but it's a benefit, which is that, I always felt like both practically and emotionally, you're not trying to please the world. You're trying to please the one person. Like,
which is what you write about really well in the book.
Like, their job is to know what the world needs. Their job is to have spoken to many more people than you ever could, been the person, been on the road, talked to everyone, had the life experience. They are supposed to know what goes out into the world. Your job is to give them the tools they need to get what they want. And so if you've done your job and gotten it through this ringer for them that they wouldn't have the time to do otherwise, even though I feel like we all worked for people that if they had all the time in the world could write the speech themselves, but you're there to help them get what they need. If you've given them what they wanted and they know what people need, then you'll have done your job. And so like, I felt like, and the most satisfying part of a speech was not seeing it being delivered. It was the moment it was accepted as like, oh great, this is done. That was better. That's what you were always playing for. I think that's a little bit of a problem in politics. The way inside of an organization you kind of become like, you serve the principle, and I think that's for good and for ill. But in that case, I think that's the only way being a speechwriter is possible, because you're not a president. You're not the person. You're there to help them.
Yeah, that was always my favorite moment in the speech process too, when I would kill myself on a draft and just be a ball of stress, and then the second you sent it to him, everything in my body would relax because I'd know now it's out of my hands.
Yeah.
Right? He might come back and tear it up. But I write about this in the book. This was the night before the eulogy, and he called me back to the White House at 10 p.m., which isn't good.
Yeah.
And this after I've been killing myself on this, and this is when I go in and sit down with him, and he drew just 2 lines through it, and I actually apologized to him because I really did feel like I'd let him down. But he said kind of what you said, Lovett. He walked back down the stairs and he put his hand on my shoulder, which was rare, and he said, "Listen, brother, we're collaborators. You gave me what I needed to work on this and get it done. And when you've been thinking about this stuff," and he's talking about race, for 40 years, you'd know what you wanted to write too. And like that helped a lot. just to get that. Just be like, you're not an abject failure, only a partial failure.
No, I look the race speech in Philadelphia during the campaign when he like sent back his edits, which was like a huge rewrite of that speech, and it's like, I can no more disown my pastor than I can my white grandmother. I'm like, I'm not going to give him that line.
Yeah, we're not going to give him that.
I wasn't going to write that line for Barack Obama. Like, that's only something that he could do himself, you know? All right, so what was harder, sharing an office with Lovett or sharing a house with Tommy?
Oh, wow.
There we go. Giddy up.
Well, they were both great joys. Lovett
Here it comes.
Lovett didn't come in till noon, and when he did,
Yes.
and when he did, he'd be wearing shorts and riding his electric scooter.
Yeah. Okay. First of all,
Through the EEOB. Through the
2 points about this.
Basketball.
One, I was riding electric scooter and e-bikes, pedal assisted bikes, a decade before they were popular. I was mocked.
Early adopter.
Rightly
and
so.
I would wear a t-shirt and shorts because even on an electric scooter, I would just swamp the whole thing out, the whole system.
But would you
Yeah.
change out of the shorts and the t-shirt?
Yes, I would change the moment if I had to
sure.
leave the room again.
Okay.
I would wear the shorts and the t-shirts to cool down until I had to leave again. Then I would change.
And again, at this point, it's noon.
It's almost time to go home.
At this point, I'm like, I love it. Is working on this draft. Is he around? Do we have edits? The president wants to see us. Is he coming?
Lovett
then-
would ask, do I have to put a suit on to go to the bathroom? What do you think?
That's true. That's true.
People see me.
I wasn't meant. Look, I honestly I wandered around that White House like a donor for like for years. I can't believe they let me in here. I guess I paid.
Cody, you actually gave me great advice about what to wear to work as a roommate, because on the day of the Bin Laden operation, our then other roommate, Michael O'Neill, for some reason, hosted a cooking class in our kitchen, and it was a shared kitchen and living room. And you and I were like, what the fuck is going on here? So we started watching a basketball game and just trying to like nurse a hangover. And the Celtics were on, so I was wearing a Celtics jersey, and I got called into the White House, and I was like, think I can go in like this? Would anybody care? And you were like, you should absolutely not go in like that.
Yeah, we
And,
didn't know you were going in to be informed about
No,
the
we
Bin
did
Laden
not.
raid.
No, we did not.
I
But it was
did-
good advice.
I was there too, and it was later
Yeah.
on the BlackBerry. It's like Rhodes was like, "Oh yeah, here's draft. Here's a set of draft remarks," and I'm like, "Remarks for what?" I'm like, "Oh, the killing of Osama bin Laden." Okay,
Yeah.
sick. I guess we're doing this now.
Yeah.
So
Thank
we're doing
God.
that.
Like I wasn't wearing a Larry Bird jersey.
Tommy was a great roommate. There's one of my favorite pages in the book is where I compare and contrast you and our other roommate, Michael O'Neill.
There's a little much like Tommy's this monk, like early to bed, early to rise. Tommy, I'm like, what the fuck?
He was, though.
Excuse me, sir.
Okay,
I was a very
I
good
was a
boy.
fat ass. I spent some time there.
Please.
The book is Grace. President Obama and the 10 days. Sorry, book is Grace. President Obama and 10 days in the battle for America. Cody, you have written a fantastic book.
love this book.
Everyone, the Pod Save America audience, you guys will absolutely love this book.
Yeah.
It is inspirational. It makes you hopeful about politics. It's like it's the antidote to everything that exists in politics right now.
Yeah, read a chapter, then go knock some doors.
So go check it out. Buy it today.
I'm
Cody,
really proud of it. And so thank you guys for having me on.
Of course.
Thanks for coming.
Also,
on.
yeah, do we do plugs here?
Yeah, plug whatever you want. We already just plugged the fuck out of the book.
I'm on,
What are you looking for?
no, I'm on
This is an ad.
tour. I'm on tour. So
Go see Cody.
yeah,
Is
go
there a
see Cody
website?
on
I'm
tour.
out. CodyKeenan.com. All the events are there. Tommy and I did an event in LA already. The whole V-Hive showed up. It was awesome. Fabs and I are going to be back here in LA next week at the LA Public Library
That's
as
right.
part of their
That'll
Loud
be fun.
lecture series. So please come on out. It's fun. Writing a book is great. Selling the book is not so great. But these live events are just awesome because you get to meet people who are really, really wonderful.
CodyKeenan.com. Come say hi. All right. Thanks, Cody.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks to Cody for joining us today. And we'll talk to you next week. Love it. Good luck on those Pennsylvania diners.
Say hi to the Trafalgar gang.
You bet. I'm out here. I'm out here talking to people, and they're sick of this. Sick of all this partisanship.
You and
Aren't we all?
you and Selena Zito out there.
Take me seriously, but don't take me literally.
Tommy,
Mm-hmm.
you've got a new series.
Oh, I do. That's right.
Tell us all about it.
Yeah, I've been working on a limited series for a few weeks with a guy named Roger Bennett, who hosts a fantastic soccer podcast called Men in Blazers. And we're going to talk about the 2022 World Cup, which is being held this year in Qatar. And that is problematic for a lot of reasons. It was awarded based on rampant corruption up and down FIFA, the body that governs international soccer. Qatar is a horrible place to live if you are a woman or an LGBT person. And it's intolerable if you are a foreign worker, who are the people who are building all the infrastructure that went into the games when they were awarded in 2010. So we're trying to figure out, what do you do as a sports fan when the game you love has been corrupted by money and these autocrats, especially in the Gulf, that try to do something called sports washing, which is burnish their reputation by getting involved in international soccer? And what can we as fans do about it? What can players do about it? And what can clubs do about it? So it's a lot of fun. It's going to be released on the Pod Save the World feed and the Men in Blazers feed. So check it out, starting this Saturday.
This Saturday?
This Saturday.
Excellent. And the trailer's out now. Everyone go check out the trailer.
Trailer's out.
Right on the Pod Save the World feed.
It'll be fun.
All right. Also, this is your last chance, everyone, to buy a pair of Crooked Carryuma shoes. You can order your favorite today in the Crooked store, and as always, a portion of the proceeds will go to Vote Riders, the leading organization focused on helping people navigate voter ID laws. We got 2 designs. They're both great. Check it out at crooked.com/kicks and grab your pair today.
It's one of our best URLs we've done.
Yeah, it's so simple.
It's easy, yeah.